Hi there, and welcome to the 37th episode of Career Stories Live. And today I'm joined by Daisy Lund, who's an NHS general practitioner, medical educator, and podcaster. The series is called In a Nutshell. So, welcome, Daisy, and thank you very much for joining me today.
Oh, hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
It's going to be great to chat. So just for a little bit of background, so Daisy and I have never met, but I stumbled across her podcast one evening when I was looking for something else to listen to, which she co-hosts with another GP called Clare. So it's about vegan living and plant-based diets, etc. So we'll definitely talk a bit more about that as we go through. But yes, I just messaged to say I really enjoyed it and invited her to come on. I'm really happy to say that she has. So it's going to be great to chat. So as always, please do comment to let us know that you're here, where you're joining from. Feel free to ask any questions as we go through. I've never had a GP on before, so hopefully there'll be some good information here. And as always, just the basis for these lives really is I've always been really interested in what people do, why they do it. I just like learning about different roles and career paths. And the aim is to inspire thought really about what people could do, give them information, advice on where to source information. And all my guests are always very generous with sharing a few tips. So we'll go over to you now, Daisy, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a brief intro to you and what it is you're doing right now work-wise.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, it's really exciting to be on. This is the first time I've done something like this, so I hope I don't trip up on my words too much. Normally we get a chance to edit our podcast, but it's all live. So yeah, no, it's really great to be here. I'm a GP, so I'm a NHS GP, and I do some private GP work on the side as well. So I have a combination of roles, patient-facing roles, which I really enjoy. Alongside that, I do other things as well. So I am a medical educator. I have a PGC in medical education, and I work at my old medical school, actually, where I trained, which is lovely. I'm a clinical tutor there, and I do that mainly for final year students, but I've done a bit in first and second year students as well. And my role as a medical educator, I hope, extends into the podcast, because last year, as you mentioned, myself and a GP friend, Clare, we started a podcast. So we are both plant-based health professionals, and we're very passionate about nutritional education, because we both feel that that isn't something that was taught very much in medical school in our days. It's certainly getting better now, but nutrition wasn't a huge part of our training. And we both came across the benefits of a plant-based diet quite late into our careers. And having learned what we did learn, we decided that we want to share that information. And so our podcast provides education, really, not just for healthcare professionals, but for everyone who's interested in eating a plant-based diet or eating less meat.
Brilliant, thank you. You must be incredibly busy with all of those different elements of your job.
It's a mixed week.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, so I always start with early careers. So did you have a job whilst you were at school or college? And if so, has that helped you in any way?
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, I always worked throughout school, maybe through my A-levels, but certainly through medical school. I had a very sort of mindset that I wanted to stand on my own 2 feet and be independent. I hated asking my parents for money. So I did work. I worked in various roles, actually, as you do as a student, I think, mainly public facing. So I worked I actually worked for Estee Lauder as a sort of like on the counter on the shop floor.
Okay. Yeah.
At various different, they'd sort of send me to various different locations depending on where there was sickness absence or something like that. So it's ad hoc. Selling makeup and skincare and things like that. So I did that. And yeah, I did that for most of medical school. And I think it was good because it did give me the confidence in speaking to people and, coming away from being a child into sort of a more adult world. So I think it's great to work as a student. I think it really gives you that confidence, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I guess obviously different to prescribing things, but I guess you're also looking at people's complexions or whatever and advising on different products as well. So kind of being able to impart that information is pretty useful.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was a nice thing to do as an 18, 19-year-old girl.
Yeah, excellent. So when did you know that you wanted to become a GP?
That is a good question. I was thinking about that before we came on. I went to medical school I sort of spent most of my school years knowing I wanted to be a doctor. I think a lot of that was because I was quite academic. I was good at science, and I liked biology. I did enjoy learning about the human body. And then throughout my childhood, my mum wasn't particularly well, so there's a lot of interaction with the medical profession. And I think that did influence me as a child. I remember thinking, oh, I wish I could do something to help her. I wish I could be her doctor. Obviously, it does not advise we look after our own families, but I was, 12, 13. I thought in my mind that's what I wanted to do. So, I think my teachers realized I had an interest in biology and medicine, and they saw that I was quite academic. So they sort of encouraged me into that career as well. And I had some really helpful teachers at school. So when I did go into medical school, I knew I wanted to be a doctor, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And as I mentioned to you earlier, before we came on live, you're sort of almost given a job at the end of medical school, sort of. At that time, we had a year after medical school where you did 6 months in a medicine rotation and 6 months in the surgery rotation, and that was in hospital. And after that, you then decided, what you wanted to do? Did you want to be a GP or a hospital doctor, or what specialty? You sort of had the decision after that year. And I still wasn't sure. And I particularly liked HIV medicine, and I did a job working on the HIV wards. And I thought I was going to do that whilst I was still working on the ward. And I actually met on my group, on my sort of firm, we used to call it. We had like a group of doctors. I met a surgeon who was training to be a GP. So he'd left surgery after many years as a surgeon. Yeah. And he said, oh, you're mental, you're going to do all these nights for the rest of your life, and you won't have a life, and you need to be a GP, and it's better work-life balance. And he'd gone through doing a lot of surgery before. And I thought, oh, I hadn't thought about general practice. Why don't I think about it? And I hated nights, I must say. I hated night shifts. So the prospect of coming out of night shifts after sort of, you still had to do 2 or 3 years in hospital before you go into general practice. Thought of doing it for 2 or 3 years. I thought, yeah, I can do that, and then I can leave and go into general practice. So it was mainly the hatred of nights and the influence of this ex-surgeon. I thought I could do a GP.
Wow.
And no regrets. I love it. It's been a really great career. So I'm now 22 years working in NHS this year. This is my 22nd year.
Wow.
3 of those have been in hospital. So you do the training in hospital, and then you go into a year in general practice where you're quite protected. You have a trainer, you are mentored, and then you do your further exams, and then you're sort of your own, you're fully qualified after that.
Yeah, excellent. That's all really interesting. So you mentioned that you do some kind of teaching for final year students at the college you were at. So how did you get into that?
Yeah, so about, I'm trying to think, 12 or 13 years ago now, when I was a GP partner in a practice, the practice at the time was a training practice. So a bit like I mentioned to you, we trained hospital doctors from hospital into general practice. And in order to be a trainer, you do have to do some extra qualifications. So I did a postgraduate certificate in medical education. And after that year, I could become a trainer for the hospital doctors coming through. And so that's postgraduate training for them. But then that qualification also enabled me to do undergraduate teaching as well. So I don't remember how it came about, but I think it was through somebody I met through that training course, actually, who said, oh, are you interested in the undergraduate training? And I thought, yeah, that sounds really interesting. So it's really nice working with, with students and younger people. So I actually went back, as I say, to my old medical school, to Imperial College, which was really nice. And I do work there. I'm basically a clinical tutor, which means I facilitate some of their sessions, mainly their GP teaching, basically, the consultation skills.
That's good. And do you get involved in kind of helping them to decide which route they're going to go down as well?
Yeah, so quite a lot of them will ask. Yeah, you hope that by teaching them a bit about GP, that it'll inspire them to be GPs. So yeah, they do ask. I'm not directly involved in any formal careers advice, but informally, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. That sounds really good. So it just shows that really in whatever profession you're in, who you know is really important, isn't it? And building that network.
Yes, that is very true, actually. Yeah. Because I think that's how opportunities also rise. You have to have the qualifications, and sometimes you have to have a degree of experience. But actually, I think when people, when you do meet people and they suggest things that, excuse me, sorry, perhaps you hadn't thought of or you hadn't considered before,
Yeah.
That's where the networking does have an impact in my profession anyway.
Excellent. And do you still stay in touch with quite a lot of the people that you were on your degree course with?
Yes, a few. So they are scattered around doing various things. One of them was a pediatrician, a couple of GPs, a couple have gone abroad. So yeah, I try to.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show how varied everyone's career has been, actually.
Yeah.
Even within my PGC, the last qualification I had, we had a group, and I'm still in touch with them. And they're obviously all GPs themselves, but they all do very different things in addition to their GP role.
Yeah.
So I keep in touch with them as well.
That's good. So is that quite common then, that people that are kind of doing GP roles are doing other things as well?
It can be, yeah, I think so. I think, I think for some people, they just want to do the day job, and that's fine. And for some people, they can combine it with other things. So
Yeah.
teaching tends to be a big one, because as I say, we do need to facilitate the next generation of GPs that are coming in. So there will be practices that are set up as what they call training practices. So sometimes when you go to see your GP, you might be seeing a GP trainee, for example. And so you do need in every one of those practices a trainer to help facilitate that. So teaching and training is probably a big one that people do alongside their clinical work. But they can do all sorts of things. So some people go into medical journalism on the side. Some people go into a bit more politics, and they end up on the boards of that make more decisions more strategically for general practice and funding. And I think because you have the skills and you know what's going on the ground, it actually is really helpful to have GPs in those roles working alongside their clinical work, because they can sort of shape various, community initiatives or policies locally, or funding to various different streams, and they can advocate for their patients in more strategic roles as well.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And interesting what you just talked about people doing kind of medical journaling. So I've got a friend who's a physio. He was an NHS physio, but now he's going into copywriting for the health profession. So using his experience as being a physio, so that's really great. And there's someone else that's a physio that's also now doing Pilates instructing, and again using those principles. So it's really nice to see things that are in a kind of a slight tangent but still really related.
Yeah. And I think it's really nice also to stay true to what you originally trained as. So I think I'll always want to be, hands-on clinical patient-facing GP, because I think knowing what my patients need, knowing what the issues are that they're facing, will help me in these other roles as well. So I think the two work quite well together rather than doing them in isolation.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so that leads nicely onto your podcast then. So you've launched a podcast, as I mentioned, called In a Nutshell. So can you talk a bit about that and how and why you've done that?
Yes. So in 2019, my life sort of changed quite dramatically. I watched a documentary called Game Changers. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yes, I've seen that, yes.
Yeah. So I was quite sporty at the time. I still am, and my husband is as well, and we both enjoy running and cycling. And I thought, oh, this is interesting, like all these athletes eating more plant-based diets, and their recovery is getting better. I mean, we're not athletes, but look, you all want to be able to run that park run a bit faster or whatever.
Absolutely.
So I said to my husband, why don't we try this for 2 weeks? We were both meat eaters, we're both omnivores, and hadn't really considered much, as I say, not even about nutrition, but anything about where our food came from or anything like that. It just wasn't on our radar. But we decided to try it for 2 weeks. So we switched from being, pretty much having meat at every meal to just being a vegan diet for 2 weeks. And we both felt great. We both felt so energetic, and we felt we did recover quite quickly from workout sessions, and we slept better. And after the 2 weeks, I thought, oh, I'm going to continue. I love this way of eating. I'm being more adventurous with my food. And he was in agreement. So we just continued and continued. And then I started looking into more about the nutritional aspects of it, and am I doing the right thing for my health long term? And I found an organisation called the Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. I didn't even know that existed. So as a group of health professionals, this organisation was launched by a founder, Dr. Shireen Kassam, who's a consultant haematologist in the NHS. And, you know, there was so much information from this organization about the benefits, the medical evidence, the studies, just all this that we were never really taught, I don't think, either at medical school or in life in general. So it was a real eye-opener for me. And I did the University of Winchester plant-based nutrition course. It's actually in the first lockdown in the pandemic. And I actually thought, you know what, there is such a huge body of evidence to really advocate for a whole food plant-based diet. Because it will reduce our risk of all the, you know, the major chronic diseases that we live with in the Western world, and that that I see premature deaths from. So I'm talking about cardiovascular disease, diabetes, certain cancers. So these were things I was seeing day in, day out in my role in general practice, feeling like I wasn't doing as much as I could to help my patients, feeling like it was a prescription, that they didn't want another drug to add on top of another drug. And suddenly this whole world opened up that, hold on, what we eat and our lifestyle, all this has a huge impact on our health. And so I became really interested after this course as to how I can incorporate a bit more about nutrition into the consultations that I have with patients. And so we were doing that on a one-to-one and trying to fit it into the, you know, really packed 10-minute GP consultation as it is. It's, you know, a tight time frame in GP. You don't have that much time with your GP. There's a lot to cover. So it's challenging, but I tried it. And, you know, was given various talks here and there to either medical students or to fellow colleagues about plant-based nutrition and lifestyle medicine. And eventually I met Clare, who was another GP in London, and we both sort of really shared that same frustration of we're not getting the message across to bigger groups. We're doing small talks in our areas, in our practices, to our patients, but how can we get the word out there, you know, a little bit more broadly? And the idea came from about a podcast, because I love listening to podcasts. I will listen to, I can listen all day if you let me. And I learn quite a lot of my information through podcasts. I listen to medical ones, I listen to, you know, non-medical ones. And so I said, well, why don't we give it a try? So we pitched this to Shireen, the founder of the organization, and we said, look, this is what we're thinking. And she was so supportive and really keen with the idea and let us really run with it, which was so fantastic of her, because it has really been something that Clare and I had no idea about. You know, we're both GPs. We've never done any of this before. So massive learning curve. We're about, I think, 6 months in now, maybe less. We start, about that. And it's been really successful. It's been really well received. We're both really enjoying being podcast hosts, which we never thought would be part of our work remit. We interview people, we interview experts, basically, doctors, dietitians, nutritionists, and we talk about all sorts, not just health benefits of plant-based, but also the environmental concerns regarding agriculture in general, and climate change. And so I'm learning so much as I'm going along. And it's been really fun.
Oh, it's excellent. Yeah, so I found it by accident one night when I couldn't sleep, looking through my list of podcasts, and came across it. So it's great. And actually, Game Changers was what made my youngest son, so he's now 18, but watching that is what made him go vegan. So I already was a couple of years previously, and it was because my cholesterol was high, and the nurse that I saw said you have to go on medication. I thought, I don't want to go on medication. So I was already vegetarian, so the only thing I could cut out was dairy, but it did have a massive impact, and you know, it's really good now. So I'm so glad.
The studies are there, you know, the evidence, and I think that's what's really important to us as medical professionals. We're not just giving our opinion on something. We want to reveal and showcase the evidence, the studies that are there, and that's what we base our recommendations on. It's very evidence-based, and that's important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually had a nutrition coach on a couple of weeks ago, and I had hired her I'm doing a marathon, so I'd hired her for some coaching on nutrition around that, because I'm sure you experience as well. Every time you mention you're a vegan, someone says, where do you get your protein from, and all of that kind of stuff, which I don't think I've got a problem with anyway. But anyway, I got her involved, and she hadn't worked with someone who was vegan before, so she actually really enjoyed it because she kind of went off and did all the research and gave me a really tailored program, and it's made a massive difference to my running as well. So even though I was already vegan, but having that extra bit of nutrition coaching really makes a difference.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely, I agree. I think there's still quite a lot of misinformation about plant-based eating, and like you say, where do you get your protein from? So we're hoping to go through each of those and debunk some of those myths that are still out there.
Yeah, brilliant. And how are you promoting your podcast at the moment? Are you just, because obviously I just found it, but is there a more structured approach that you've got going on as well?
We're hoping so, yeah. So as I say, we're both quite new to this. So the idea was, let's get a bit of body of work out there first, and then we can really start promoting it. So at the moment, it's pretty much all just word of mouth within our organisation. So Plant-Based Health Professional has got thousands of members. So we're hoping that they will, and I have heard they enjoy listening to it. But yes, we do need a more strategic marketing plan, which we're in the process of starting up just now.
Brilliant.
So again, a completely new field to us. Neither of us have ever needed to promote our services. In fact, I think most GPs would say, don't come to your GP if you don't need to. But now we're trying to get people to listen. So it's a very different mindset actually to what I've been doing my whole life.
Yeah, excellent. So my next question you've kind of touched on already, which was what made you try to educate other doctors in the benefits of plant-based diets. But I guess I'm interested in, like, have you had much resistance from people, or have people generally been open, or is it mixed? Or
mixed, I'd say. So I think people are interested. I think generally the population in general is becoming more interested, and not just for health reasons, but for the environmental concerns as well, with and sort of understanding that how much our diets can contribute to climate change and what we're eating. So people are certainly interested. But I think, as I say, my generation, I was in medical school in the 90s. Our nutritional education was really minimal. I mean, we're not nutritionists, we're not dietitians. I understand that. And there's a lot that medical schools need to cover. The curriculum is massive. So I do get that. But it's you sort of come away thinking that there's more, I feel there's more to an illness or a chronic condition than just the medication. And I feel like there's a lot of doctors who perhaps don't have the confidence to talk about other things because we just don't have that background. It's only really doctors that do their own education or do additional courses later, like I did with the University of Winchester, that you actually sort of gain more information to be able to promote, diet and lifestyle. Although things are changing, I think people are realizing there's a shift, I guess, towards more looking at a holistic view of an illness, not just, treating the sort of symptoms, as it were. Looking at root causes and things. So there's a long way to go, though. I still think not just doctors, but I think we can help bring education to nurses, all our allied medical colleagues. So you go to your GP practice and you might see your nurse for your dressing or for your diabetic issue, and if they can help promote a good lifestyle and nutritional education, then that would be great as well. So we're hoping that across the board we'll be able to bring advice and education to healthcare professionals in general. But I think there's still quite a long way to go with it. I think it's quite, there's still, like you say, the misconceptions of protein and B12 and I still see that Clare always mentions this. We see letters from hospital consultants saying, oh, such and such is low iron, I've got them to eat more meat. And it's like, oh, you don't need red meat for iron. There's so many other sources of iron. In fact, I know this is anecdotal, but most of the patients I saw with an iron deficiency anemia are meat eaters. So this is not a vegan problem. This is it's a bit more complicated than that. So there's a lot of misinformation still that we need to.
And it seems it could save a lot of money for NHS, particularly if people did make some of these changes.
100%. You've hit the nail on the head. I mean, we actually have got a mini episode on that very recently. There was a study that came out about the billions that the NHS could save, mainly through reduction of chronic disease. So we know that chronic diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, and cancers are causing premature death, but they're also causing quite long lives of illness, ill health. And that's really what we need to tackle. There's no point in looking at living longer if you're living that in poor health. We need to tackle and prevent or reduce the risk of these sorts of illnesses causing ill health for people. And by doing that, the NHS really will make a huge cost saving. If there's data out there.
Yeah, that's great. I'm just seeing someone's popped up. So Ashish is saying happy Friday. So thank you for joining. It's very nice.
It's Friday.
Excellent. So I'm sure I read something recently about a couple of NHS hospitals trialing vegan meals as well. I don't know if that is that.
Yeah.
If I remember that correctly, yes.
Yeah, so we're inspired by New York, because in New York, the mayor there has transformed the hospitals to all initially serve your first choice being a vegetarian or vegan option. So yeah, because I don't know if you know much about him, but he reversed his diabetes through.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. So we have a thing or two to learn from New York's hospitals. And I think, there's a lot of work within the plant-based health professionals now, both with Shireen and one of her colleagues, LJ Smith, who's a respiratory consultant, both at King's. They're doing a lot of work to try and change hospital menus, because it really is ludicrous that hospitals are serving, processed red meat, which WHO has already classified as a grade 1 carcinogen. And these are being served on wards or in canteens. It's not right, and it does need to change. And it's getting there, so there's more interest. So yeah, we're excited for the future of plant-based eating.
Excellent. Okay, so I normally ask a question about values. So, and I think we probably know this from what we already talked about, but so people that mention their values when they're looking for work. So do you think your personal values have got an impact on your work?
Yeah, I think they always have. I mean, I think you have to have like that sort of caring, nurturing sort of, I guess, not just value, but what's what I'm looking for, personality to go into medicine, I think, initially. So you've got to want to help others and get some joy or benefit from that, because you're not going to be in it for the money. It's not like you go to finance if you want to make lots of money. It's all about the vocation, and medicine is such a vocational career. It's brilliant, it's really rewarding, and I've really enjoyed, actually, more so I think in general practice, that relationship I've had with my patients, and seeing that community that I worked with change and grow. I've seen, like, for example, I saw people that, I don't know, were struggling to get pregnant, and then they did, and then I've looked after their babies, and that has just been really nice, being part of the community. So I think the values that you have to have as a doctor, and particularly as a GP, you probably have a very early life. I suppose my values not changed so much, but the focus shifted a bit when I learned more about what happens to the animals, because I've always felt like I'm compassionate towards people, and I've always looked after people. As I say, I've been in the NHS now for 22 years, and my whole life has been looking after others. But when I learnt about the plight of the animals, I just thought, hold on a second, I've not considered them at all in my life. And if my values of compassion and looking after humans has been such a huge part of my life, I need to extend that to the non-human animals, because they are also suffering, and their suffering is different to ours, but it's nonetheless very apparent. So I think that's where the shift occurred, when my eyes opened really to what happens in animal agriculture, and I didn't like what I saw. It didn't align with my values at all. Values that perhaps I had all my life, but I just had blinkers on. I think I hadn't considered that. Hadn't really stopped to think about it, because I think we've normalized eating meat and eating dairy. It's become just normal, isn't it? You don't question it. It's only really when you stop to think, hold on, or you see, I've been outside slaughterhouses and I've seen the animals go in, and I think, once your eyes open to that, you think, hold on a second, I'm supposed to be this compassionate, loving GP, and I am, but what about the animals? So that's where my values changed a little. Not changed, but extended to include that.
No, thank you. Okay, so have you got any advice for people, and I've said women in particular, but anyone really who wants to get into working in medicine or healthcare, as a kind of a university leaver?
Yeah, I think medicine's a great career. I know there's been a lot of controversy recently. Doctors have been striking, and everyone looks very unhappy post-pandemic. But really, it's been a great career for me, and I think it hopefully will continue to be. I hope that the government will realise what a valuable thing we have in the NHS and fund it appropriately. Because it's only when you're ill and you need it that you realise how lucky we are in this country to have it. So I really hope it continues to grow and to be a successful organisation, and that people enjoy working within it. I have enjoyed my 22 years. There have been hard moments. But every job has its challenges. So my advice would be to school leavers: do it if you're interested, if that's what you want to do, if you like helping people, if you like being with people, if you're happy to be with people when they're at their lowest, worst moment, because you're going to see things that are difficult and you're going to have to be there when things get tough for people. If you're okay with that, do it, because it's so rewarding. It really is a privilege to be a doctor. Work hard. You've got to work hard in everything. I don't think that's, everyone says, medicine's hard work, it's long hours, but that, I think, is a lot of careers, isn't it? Everyone works hard, I don't think, but that, you reap the benefits of hard work. And what I would say about medicine is, like, I think we mentioned this, Sarah, before we came on live, is, you think that you're just going to be a doctor and that's it, you're seeing patients, but you can do a lot actually in your life, so you can zigzag around a bit with it. You can choose to be just clinical, patient facing, you can choose research, you can choose politics, you can choose journalism, all those things we talked about before. I think it's a career that does give you a lot of opportunities, and that's really nice about it, and you can move around a bit within it.
Brilliant, thank you. And then the final question was just about the kind of the plant-based diet again. So have you got advice for anybody else who wants to help others to understand the benefits of a plant-based diet?
Send them the link to our podcast.
Absolutely. So I will put a link to your podcast in the chat afterwards anyway, so that people can see that, because it's definitely is really, really helpful.
Yeah, have a listen to us. Have a look at the Plant-Based Health Professionals UK website. There's a lot of free resources on there. It's available to everyone, and there's a lot of information about how to do it. But what I would say, my advice would be, educate yourself. Because what we eat, whether you decide to go plant-based or you want to continue eating meat, what you eat is important for your health. We are seeing people with cardiovascular disease, whether that's high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart disease, stroke, cancers, diabetes, increase year on year. And we're seeing people diagnosed earlier and earlier. So there's clearly something going wrong here. Our society are eating the wrong things. We're too sedentary. We may be drinking too much alcohol. So I think we do need to think about our health, because if we don't look after our own health, into our lives, we're just going to have a life of visiting doctors and GPs and hospitals all the time, and not really wanting to be ill. So I think, educate yourself. There's a lot of resources out there. There is robust evidence that a plant-based diet is safe, effective, and will not only help you, I suppose, enjoy life, but thrive in that life. It has so many benefits for your health. That's not to be underestimated, and it's kinder to the planet that we live in, kinder to the animals. So start small if you're worried about what a plant-based diet entails. Start with a few things. Maybe try cutting out meat a couple of times a week. Just have a veggie meal, or substitute. I mean, that's the main thing I would say. If you're cutting something out, always make sure you're substituting with something. So just don't take out the piece of chicken and eat your veg and your pasta, because that's not going to sustain you. It's not going to fulfill you. Try to incorporate things like tofu, try tempeh, lentils, beans, pulses, all these really nutritious sources of protein that are plant-based proteins, because they have less saturated fat, they're better for your health, and they will make you feel full, and might even help you maintain your weight, lose weight. So they're really beneficial for many different things. And on our website, on the Plant-Based Health Professional website, you can see some what they call swap sheets. So if you're not sure, there's like a fact sheet. Will say what you can swap out and what you can swap in, and that's quite a nice thing to do, to follow that. So have a look at our website as well.
Brilliant. I'll put links to those in the chat as well, so that people can see those. So thank you so much for coming on, Daisy. It's been really interesting. I'm sure people watching will have got lots of information out of that. So if you are watching on catch up, please do feel free to add any comments. So thank you again, Daisy.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's been really good fun. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. So next week I'm back on Thursday at 1 o'clock with Steve O'Connor, who is the director of the River and Rowing Museum in Henley. So that's going to be another interesting chat, I'm sure. So thanks again and see you next week. Bye.
Bye.